Well, thank you, everybody. And when someone reads a resume that goes on and on like that, means I'm old. I've been doing this for some time. So, but I'm happy to share tonight. The presentation is how to protect yourself and your loved ones like a pro, um, taught by the school that teaches the pros, the Executive Protection Institute. Um, the purpose of this presentation is to share professional techniques that everyone can use to protect themselves. Over the next 45 minutes or so, and then we'll allow some time for questions and answers. We're going to try to make about 9 points. Don't worry, there won't be a test. And at the end, I'll go over those points as I make them a little bit throughout the presentation. A little bit about the school, the Executive Protection Institute. It's considered one of the oldest and most recognized EP schools. It was founded in 1978 by Dr. Richard W. Kobetz. He was a police officer in Chicago and was selected to protect the mayor. At that time was Mayor Daley. And he said that he was good with his gun. He had used it in the line of duty. He was good with his baton. He was a martial artist, and he was big. And that's why he got picked to protect the mayor. There was no training. He was brought into the mayor's office, introduced the mayor, and the mayor said, "Son, don't put your hands on a voter unless you have to protect me or yourself." And that concluded the training that he received. His first thing that he realized is that working in high society was different than being a beat cop. He had to learn how to eat, how to dress appropriately, things like that. He eventually went on to the International Association of Chiefs of Police, where he developed many training programs, and one of which was executive protection that police officers needed to protect public officials. And then he realized that there was no readily available training school on the private sector. So he founded the Executive Protection Institute in 1978 and began teaching a 7-day program that consists of about 100 hours of training. We start on a Sunday night and we finish Saturday afternoon. So it's quite intense. It's about 2.5 weeks of training rolled up into one. We bring in a lot of different subject matter experts that are working in government, working in private sector, to teach different aspects of the program. To date, we have just under, I think, 4,000 graduates. We have an alumni association called the 9 Lives Associates, and we do a lot of networking within that, within our own graduates and alumni. Myself, Craig mentioned that I've been doing this for a considerable number of years, and I've had the privilege to work in about 60 countries. I've flown on private planes. I've been with a lot of different notable people. And as Craig mentioned, I started my company in 1989. I've had the good fortune to work with the Secret Service on many different occasions, supplementing their protection. As you can see, there's a picture with Hillary when she was First Lady, President Bush, President Ford, Senator Obama in the lower picture. I'm probably the last person to protect him before he got Secret Service protection. He came to New York to attend an event, and then he announced that he would announce, I believe he announced the next day that he was running, and immediately got Secret Service protection. So the lady I'm standing with is a queen, and she happens to be my queen. That's my wife. We've been married 43 years, so I'm pretty happy about that. I founded IPSA as a guard agency in 1989, and just recently sold it. But I still operate my parent company, IPG. We still do executive protection and high-end special events. And then I took over ownership of the Executive Protection Institute in 2009. Since then, the founder, Dr. Richard Kobetz, passed in 2018. So one thing tonight, I want to make sure there's a difference between self-defense tactics and protection tactics. So self-defense is hand-to-hand. Protection tactics is more planning, and we'll get into what protection tactics is all about. But a lot of people think how to protect yourself and your loved ones is like self-defense. That's an important aspect of protection, either for yourself, protecting yourself, your family, or others. But I really want to delve into what we call protection tactics. And one thing we want to emphasize, we sometimes call this program How to Be Your Own Bodyguard. There's an image of a bodyguard, and sometimes they're called gorillas in suits, often thought of as big burly guys, strong guys, big guys. But there's a difference between untrained bodyguards and trained professional protectors. So our emphasis is, even if we use the word bodyguard, as a trained professional bodyguard. In the industry, we don't like it, but we can't get away from that word, bodyguard. So if we say how to be your own bodyguard, how to protect your family or yourself as your own bodyguard, we're talking about more, not that you have to be big, strong, a fighter, things like that. It's really more about planning and things like that, which I'm going to get into a little bit. There's a good story that we use that illustrates the difference of things. I heard this from Lieutenant Colonel Grossman, who's a noted author, and he gives credit to someone from Vietnam era that shared it with him. And the emphasis is that most people are like sheep, and not in any bad way. If you look at sheep, they're innocent creatures. They don't want to hurt anybody. It's almost like they don't have capacity to hurt anyone, unless it was by accident, maybe. They just want to eat grass, smoke grass, just live their life, not bother anybody. And you think about most people, there's many people like that. They don't want to hurt anybody. They're innocent, and on the other side of that, we have wolves, and wolves are predators. Wolves, and as strong as you see those wolves in the photo there, you would think they could just go right into a herd of sheep, pick the fattest one, take them out, and eat them. But they're really cunning. They sneak around on the edges of things, and they're sneaky. Sometimes they look for a lamb that's wandered off, and then they're going to grab them and take off with them. When you think of predators, there's many different types of predators. There's violent predators, and we look at society today, there's robbers, there's rapists, there's pedophiles, there's a lot of different types who prey on the innocent. Now, when a sheep herder has a flock of sheep, they often bring in a sheepdog, and the sheepdog's job is to protect the herd. And they're going to be aware, they're circling around the sheep. If the sheep gets stirred up, they check it out. If a wolf appears, they'll put themselves between the sheep and the wolves. And basically they're telling the wolf, let's do this. If you want a sheep, you got to come through me. And what it is they're really capable of using violence to counter violence. Now, when the wolf comes around, the sheep hide behind the sheepdog and say, sheepdog, protect us, we're afraid. When the wolf goes away, the sheep begin to look at the sheepdog, and they think, he's not one of us. He's got a long snout. He almost looks like the wolf. So if we put this into our terms, basically, to protect yourself and others, and again, our children are often sheep-like. They're innocent creatures, and we have to protect them. there's predators. So the first emphasis that I make is, one is we have to change our mindset. We have to stop being an innocent sheep. In order to protect ourselves and our loved ones, we have to stop being innocent, stop being a victim. And sometimes if you are walking down the sidewalk, you can see a lot of people and they're almost like innocent sheep, and they could be a victim at any moment. So to protect ourselves and our loved ones, we have to change and become a sheepdog. We have to develop a protector's mindset. The one thing when I use the sheepdog, what's important for people to understand, we're not talking about guard dogs. So when we look at a guard dog, the timber wolf there, the German Shepherd, the Doberman, they're snarly, they're mean, they ferocious. To be a protector, we don't have to be like a guard dog. Our emphasis is like a sheepdog. You got an English sheepdog there, you got a border collie. So we don't have to be big and strong. We don't have to be nasty and mean to be able to protect other people. And sometimes when we think of bodyguards, sometimes the bodyguards are they're the ones on the end of a chain, and they're snarling and scary looking. We can be soft and fluffy and still protect people. Now, when we talk about mindsets, and I don't have time to delve into these, and believe me, I could speak hours on these topics, but there is a protector's mindset, which we're going to talk a little more about tonight. There is a warrior's mindset and also a survival mindset. Is my time up? I'm sorry.
No, Chuck needs to mute his microphone.
Okay.
Or you can do it for him.
I believe he's muted now, is he?
Yeah, all good, Jerry.
Okay. Oops. Protector's mindset is the mindset we have planning and to protect ourselves. Warrior mindset is if you have to engage into combat, you have to get physical. Survival mindset is the mindset to stay in the fight, even if you're injured, you might get hurt, is to have that determination that, you're not going to take advantage of me. You're not going to defeat me. I'm hurt, but I'm going to stay in the fight. Those are simple ways to describe those mindsets. I work this into all my presentations. This book, Think and Grow Rich, changed my life. I often tell people I would say it's my first religion. And the emphasis of this is you have to have positive thinking. If you have positive thinking, you'll get positive results. If you think negative, you'll get negative results. So to protect yourself and your loved ones, you cannot have the attitude is, I'm innocent, I'm not capable of protecting myself. If somebody wants their way with me, it's going to happen. You got to stop that way of thinking. You got to think positive. I can protect myself. I can protect my family. I can protect others. So point number 2 I want to make is in terms of protection, we have to have a positive mental attitude. We have to have positive thinking as we go about protecting ourselves and others. Next important point is situational awareness. We have to be aware of our surroundings. I mentioned if you watch people on a sidewalk, sometimes you see a lot of victims because they're walking, and almost everyone now has a smartphone. Is it a smartphone or is it a dumb phone? In some presentations, I'll show videos of people walking with their phone and falling in a pond, falling in a pool, walking into a car when they're crossing the crosswalk. I think the use of smartphones is good. I use it, but we have to be aware of how we use it. If we're in a mall, what's important is we don't get lost in the phone. What I recommend people is to back up against a wall somewhere, bring the phone up where you can see over the top of it. You can check your phone, but you can still see what's going on. So to protect ourselves and others, we have to be aware of our surroundings. It's very critical, situational awareness. We need to look for suspicious behavior or suspicious people. So in order to do that, we have to have our head up. We have to be paying attention. Many times people will come up to me when I'm working and they're talking to me. I'm not looking at them. I'm looking out, say, at a crowd, and they often say, "What are you looking for?" I say, "I'm not looking for normal. I'm looking for weirdness. I'm looking for what doesn't seem right." So in order to protect ourselves and others, our family, we have to look and be aware of our surroundings. And we often use a color code of mental awareness. It was developed by Jeff Cooper. White is when you're locked in your home, you're secure, you can relax, you don't have to think about anything. As soon as you step out your front door, you elevate to another level, to yellow. You're cautious, you're aware. I tell people, when you leave your home, put your phone away. Even when you're walking out to the car, stop talking on the phone. Finish your call, put the phone away, and then when you go outside your house, look around and look to make sure you're safe and secure. You get in your car. Same thing, leaving the mall. Sometimes the phone rings. Wait till you're in the car and the car door is locked, and then you can take that call. That's what voicemail's for too. You see something suspicious, now you go from yellow, cautious, to a greater awareness. You go into orange. Maybe then something happens, you hear a bang. Today, one thing we're faced with is active shooters. You hear some gunshots. Now you're actually in red. Now you're in danger. You need to take some action. So that's that color code awareness. Now, this is a secret that a lot of people don't know, is that professional protectors, we use the art of avoidance. A lot of what we use, techniques, they come from the art of war, which was written by Sun Tzu, I believe in 600 BC or something, very old. He was a Chinese war commander. Funny story, I was teaching a class in China and I mentioned Sun Tzu and they didn't know who Sun Tzu was. I had to explain who Sun Tzu was. But one of Sun Tzu's sayings is, "A battle not fought is a battle won." And I can tell you this, it's not because I'm psychic or psychotic. I get those two mixed up. I know the outcome of every fight I don't get in. A battle not fought is a battle won. Professional protectors, we spend almost all our time focusing on not fighting, not getting into a fight. We do that through advanced planning. We do that through doing everything humanly possible not to have to fight a battle. Now, that's the difference sometimes between professional protectors and sometimes bodyguards. The untrained bodyguard, especially if they're a boxer, they're a fighter, sometimes they want to show their value through fighting. The professional protector doesn't want to fight because we don't know the outcome. I may be a black belt and a white belt could come up behind me and smack me over the head with a wine bottle and knock me out. I don't want that to happen. Again, I know the outcome of every fight I don't get into. So professional protectors, it's not that we're not capable of fighting. We just, we want to do everything possible. So how to protect yourself and your loved ones, not get in fights. Try to do everything that you can to avoid getting into trouble. And so that's where situation awareness comes in. That's where being prepared and having some plans. This is another Sun Tzu, the supreme art of war is to subdue an enemy without fighting. So again, professional protectors, we don't want to fight. We want to do everything possible not to have to fight. And this is as important too. Every battle is won before it's fought. And part of that is your mental attitude. You can't go into a battle think, oh, I hope I survive. I hope I don't get beat up. I hope I survived this encounter. You have to have the mental fortitude to say, no one's going to beat me. No one's going to take advantage of me. Nobody's going to hurt my family. No one's going to hurt my children. No one's going to hurt me. So it starts with yourself, being self-aware, and very determined that, I'm going to do well. I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to do everything possible not to fight. And should I have to fight, I'm going to be a winner nonetheless. So we have to have that right mental attitude to do well, facing difficulties. And today we live in troubled times. COVID impacted a lot of people. Airlines are experiencing bad passenger behavior. Stadiums. I'm part of an organization that looks at security for stadiums and sporting events, and there's a lot of bad fan behavior. I don't know whether it's COVID or the political atmosphere, but there's more, in a way, weirdness, or people have shorter fuses. And when somebody explodes, they sometimes can't help themselves. So we do live in troubled times, and we have to be aware of that, and we have to be cautious of where we are. If something starts brewing, very often I suggest, if you feel something's going to happen, like a fight, clear the area. Don't need to be there. Oops. The point 5 I want to make is know and manage risk. So professional protectors, we spend a lot of time evaluating risk. And many of us use this threat formula or risk formula. It's T times X, or T times V times I equals R. Threat times vulnerability times impact equals risk. It's not an actual, mathematical formula, but we use it to evaluate risk. So threats are things we can't control. Street crime, terrorism, we can't control that. But we have to deal with it. We have to have a plan to deal with it. Vulnerability is often thought of as a weakness. Not necessarily that we're weak. If you're by yourself, you're vulnerable because there's only one of you. And if there are two of you, now you're stronger. And in that consideration, if you're going into some area where you feel uncomfortable, see if you can go with someone else. That's now you've doubled your strength by having two people. And very often predators don't often pick on two people. They're more likely to pick on one. The impact is what could happen. As professional protectors, obviously our greatest concern, say, is assassinations, kidnapping, things like that. We also have to factor in probability to that. And one thing that's very important, one point that I think is very important to make here is we don't want anyone to be paranoid, where you're walking and you're nervous and everywhere you go, you feel there's a threat. Part of that is, just normal life. You go to a mall, not everybody in the mall wants to hurt you. Not everybody in the mall is an active killer, gonna take out a gun and start killing people. Is it possible? Yes. Now, one is a mall a place where predators might be? Probably so. But if you're aware and you're looking up and you're detecting suspicious behavior, you might pick up on that. But we don't want anybody to be paranoid, or we just want you to be stronger and more aware and have the means to, protect yourself. In this formula, risk is a combination of all these factors. If one of them doesn't exist, then there's no risk. It would be very difficult to live in a type of environment where there's no risk. If you take the president and put him in a shelter, buried deep underground, he's not vulnerable. There's no threats that get to him, but what kind of life can that be? We have to live our lives. So there's ordinary threats or risk. part of it is too, what kind of area do you live in? Are you in a crime-prone area? You know, are you in a more safe area? When you leave your home, it might be safe, and then you go shopping, you're a little more exposed to some risk, things like that. You have to take that into consideration. What's the local environment that you're going, and also the time of day. In the daytime, there's less risk, say, than at night. So if you're out about at night, be aware that the possibility of a problem increases, and you just have to take some precautionary effort. In and around our home, we want to have some protective measures. And what we say in the professional world is we want to harden the target. What that means is we're going to make it a little more difficult for someone to do anything. In our home, we have locks, we might have lights, we might have alarm systems. We call it concentric rings of protection. In executive protection, we have the principal or the protectee, and then we have the close protector who might be within arm's reach. There may be secondary people, might be event security, then you have police. All these things help harden the target, and most criminals want easy targets. When you harden the target, you make it more difficult, then they're going to probably move on to an easier target. And that's not only your home, that's yourself, your family. If they feel that you're weak or you're by yourself, they could be more likely that they may try to do something. And that's where I mentioned earlier, if you're going out somewhere and you feel hesitant or you feel a little more vulnerable, see if someone else can go with you, and that gives you more strength. Security measures, we want to be able to detect, deter, delay, detain, and there's variations of that, but and again, awareness, we want to be able to detect a problem, and that's maybe a deterrence. Most criminals want to be able to do something and get away with it. If there's any reasonable delay, then they may reconsider doing that. And if there's a possibility of someone being detained, then hopefully they decide, you know what, I'm going to go on to an easier target. In our home, we have physical security measures, electronic. In the professional world, we use a certain amount of electronic countermeasures. And one tool that is underutilized is doing background checks on people that we hire, even contractors sometimes. The next consideration, and this is the heart of professional protectors, is we do a lot of advanced planning. And we often call it, we have pre-advances where we're gathering information, we're making plans. We don't just leave our house and head off in the direction. We make maps, we check the routes and things like that. One tool that I recommend using, or this is an acronym, it's called PACE. Think about what PACE might stand for. I'll move right on though. PACE is primary route, and then alternate route, contingency plans, and emergency plans. So as professional protectors, we have to consider that we're going to map out a primary route, which might be the easiest, but we have to think, what if something goes wrong with that route? What if there's either traffic or the road is shut down? We can't stop and say we can't keep going. We always plan an alternate route, and that goes also driving and walking too. We often plan. So you and your family, when you go to a mall, you might think, okay, where am I going to park? Where's the primary route where I'm going to go in? And then should I need to leave in a hurry, is there an alternate route? Contingency plans is sometimes our plans change. We have to be able to go with the flow or adapt according to our situation, and then emergency plans are, where's the nearest hospital? What do I do if there's an emergency? What's the plan of action that I'm going to take? Defensive tactics, professionals at EPI, we developed, we call this DT for EP. It's defensive tactics for executive protection. It's a little different than just self-defense. And we have a program called protection response tactics, where should a threat appear, and sometimes it's an excited fan rushes up, could cause some harm to our protectee, and we have to protect the principal from that potential harm. As professional protectors, we protect people from love and hate. An excited fan could actually hurt a principal, right, rushing up, grabbing them, making them fall down, things like that. I would recommend for everyone to have a little bit of self-defense, maybe even some basic martial arts, some simple protection tactics would be beneficial to have, where you're capable of defending yourself physically. Let's talk about firearms. Many people are of the mind that professional protectors are all armed. And I often tell clients, all my agents are armed. They have a left and a right arm. They're armed. Firearms are a tool. And I'm an advocate. I teach house of worship security, and I teach I teach firearms. And one thing that I'll advocate here is that the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. I go into some churches and they're dead set against guns, and I tell them, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I stand on this. I believe this. The only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And if you don't have guns, say in your home or your church, you're waiting for law enforcement to show up. I am an advocate that private citizens should have the capability, if you want, to be able to own arms and be able to protect your home and yourself. But it's not a magic wand. In executive protection, we say it's 1% of protection. We're not hired guns. Number one is it's a serious responsibility. A firearm has a capability of taking a life, including our own. Carrying a firearm is a serious responsibility. You have to handle it safely and carefully. I've actually carried a firearm for just under 40 years in New York City. And, fortunately, I've never had to use it. When I teach firearms, I advocate that we should do everything humanly possible not to ever have to use it. It should only be used as an absolute last resort where there's no other option. Do everything to avoid having to use deadly force. I've met people who have had to use it, and it stays with you. It's not something that goes away. There's a lot of T-shirts that people wear, say, kill them all, let God sort them out. It's not like that. It's it's a very serious concern. People that have used deadly force, they carry that with them, even righteously. If you are to use firearms or carry firearms or have them in your home, you need to make sure you align your beliefs and values to be able to use them. Sometimes people buy a firearm, but someone's breaking in, someone's threatening one of their children, and they cannot pull the trigger because they have not prepared for that. So it's important if you use firearms. And like I said, I'm an advocate that people should have the right to protect themselves and their loved ones at home against deadly, potential deadly harm. And the law allows us to be able to do that, to protect ourselves. And there are certain types of crimes where you can use deadly force should you have to. Now, one thing I'll say this, because we're in New York. New York has what's called a retreat act, where they say if you can, with complete safety to yourself and others, retreat, you should. Complete safety to yourself and others is a big consideration. And what it means is if somebody's breaking in a window, can you, with complete safety to yourself and others, go out the front door and get out of harm's way? You should. You have to consider that, can I leave? Is there somebody waiting outside the front door? Somebody's coming in the window. And again, you have to consider that, if you're going to use firearms, and you have to, there's a lot of old wives' tales. One is, better be tried by 12 than carried by 6. I don't want to have to use my firearm and then spend the rest of my life in prison because I'm deemed that was not justified. And in today's age, we see law enforcement, or we see people who have used deadly force and then be convicted and sent to prison. So if you're going to consider firearms as a means of protection on yourself, carrying it, or at your home, weigh all these things into consideration. Make sure that your firearm is legal. You have the necessary permits, things like that. When I tell people I went on a world tour, and a couple other people on the call have been on world tours, and they say, how did you carry your gun? Well, I didn't. Most professional protection is done unarmed, except in areas like, for example, I'm licensed in New York City, then I may be armed in New York City. When I travel to other countries, it's not usually possible. It's difficult to travel. Even you live in a tri-state area, you go from New York to New Jersey, are you licensed over there? Connecticut or, Pennsylvania. Each state has its own laws. You may have to get non-resident permits, things like that. So it's not a magic wand on the professional side, and certainly on the private side, you have to consider all these things. I would strongly recommend, if you're going to carry a firearm, to get training, or you own a firearm, take some training for its proper use. So I went through that actually pretty quick, but I think I'm well within the time. I'm going to review some of the points that I made. I mentioned 9 points. First is we need to change our mindset. Don't plan on being a victim. Be determined not to be a victim. Be that sheepdog. Have positive thinking about your own protection. Feel confident. Even going over some of these things, hopefully folks that aren't professional protectors can have more confidence in how to protect themselves and their loved ones. Big concern is situational awareness. Make sure that you're aware of your surroundings, what's going on around you, where are you, where are the exits, where's your car, if something happens, where's the rest of my family, can I gather them up, can we get to safety? One thing I didn't talk about is active shooter survival. There's a good program that one of our graduates developed called Alive, and it's available. There's a 20-minute online version you can watch. I think it's $9.95. If you Google active shooter survival training Alive, you'll find it there. We've taught it. Bill Stump and I have taught it at the synagogue not too long ago. Alive just stands for assess, leave, impede, violence, and then expose. So assess a situation. Should you shelter in place? Should you run? The government came up with run, hide, fight. Michael Julian, who developed the Alive program, calls his Alive program Run, Fight, Hide 2.0. It's just an enhanced version of Run, Hide, Fight. Before you run, you need to assess, should I run? Should I shelter in place? Should I lock the door? Leave is, should I leave? or not, and in which direction am I leaving to? Impede is if you're sheltering in place, can you lock the door? Can you impede somebody getting in? V, violence, are you prepared, to fight should someone come in? And you can grab a fire extinguisher, a chair, scissors off a desk, be prepared if use whatever means you have. And then E is exposed, which is when it's all said and done, make sure you're not exposing yourself too soon. Make sure you're exposing yourself with complete safety. So that's active shooter survival, the 2-minute version. The art of war or avoidance. Again, we want to not fight fights, unnecessary fights. Protecting yourself and your loved ones is not about fighting. It's really about avoidance. That's what professional protectors do, is all considerations of how to avoid any given trouble. You have to know and manage risk. So where are risky areas? When you're in your home, you might be secure. When you get in your car and lock the door, you might be secure, but between your home and the car, you're vulnerable. So you want to not dilly-dally. You want to go from your home into the car. Be aware, not on the phone, not distracted. When you get out of the car to go into the mall, you want to make sure you're aware. Put the dumb phone away. Keep your head up. If you have to use your phone, bring it up to where you can look over the top and you're not buried in the phone. Harden your target, harden your home. I'm a big advocate of signage. And also lights. When most bad people or burglars, they want to do things in the dark. Someone approaches your home, light should come on. That's usually a deterrent. Signs often help too. This house alarmed. Whether it's real or not too, people have to decide that. And part of hardening the target is to make it harder. So they look for an easier target. And that goes for you and your family too. If you're aware, you're looking at somebody, less likely of them, they're going to look for an easier target. They're going to look for that innocent sheep who's not paying attention. So planning, when you go places, plan your routes, plan to make sure you know where you are. You go into a mall, make sure you know where your car is. What's the plan if something happens? Which way are you leaving? Things like that. And that's the heart of professional protectors, is we plan everything. We get into choreographing and step-by-step plans. And we often do our advance as we go to where we're going to go with a protectee. We check the routes. We look for areas that are hazardous, and then we try to avoid those areas and have multiple plans. We use PACE. Defensive tactics or self-defense. It's a good idea to get some level of training, some self-defense tactics, how to protect yourself. Somebody grabs you, how to escape, how to break that hold, things like that. Strongly recommend people have some type of training. And point number 9 is, if you're going to use firearms, get some training, be knowledgeable, and do everything humanly possible not to have to use the firearm. There are serious consequences to doing that. It's not a magic wand. Whether you have a firearm in your home or you carry a firearm, it requires training. It requires a lot of preparation. And then again, 100% of do everything humanly possible not to have to use it. Just because you have it doesn't mean that you're safe, because also if you draw a firearm, someone may try to take it from you and then use it against you. So you have to protect it now with your life, because if somebody's trying to take your firearm, they intend to use it on you. All right, I covered a lot of points. I'm going to open up the floor to any questions.
Jerry, we had just a comment from Felix. He said, suggestion having residential security risk analysis, including fire, heat detection, carbon monoxide, flammable gas, propane, and natural gas. Voice message notification in lieu of basic loud sounds, and a few other things came to light as far as flood, low temperature, site lighting, a lot of things that you mentioned. And I think those are all great points when you said about target hardening and what we can do to really slow down a threat or make someone look for an easier target. So Felix, perfect. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Jerry, go ahead.
No, and I'm a very strong advocate of fire and life safety. I was actually the ASIS Fire Life Safety Council chair. I'm a past fire and life safety director in New York City, and I transitioned from property management into security management. So, and thank God for fire codes, because if there weren't fire codes, we would be in a lot worse shape than we are. And that's a consideration when you travel. What's it like fire safety wise? One thing I can tell you is in foreign countries, fire and life safety is not taken as serious as it is in the United States. So, and even in your own home, one thing Lieutenant Colonel Grossman advocates is the fact that in schools, they do fire drills and things like that. The number of children who have died in a school fire is really a small number. I don't think it's zero, but it's incredibly small. And the reason is a lot of preparation, training, fire drills, things like that. And fire safety at your home is critical. Fire alarms, I believe they advocate that, you know, daylight saving time, change your batteries in your smoke detectors. Unfortunately, a friend of mine recently, his daughter and granddaughter perished in a home fire. And that really struck my heart. You know, so another way to protect yourself and your family is fire and life safety. Make sure your home is fire safe and things like that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, definitely a great point, Felix. Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Feel free to just unmute and shut them out. Everyone should have the option to unmute at this point.
Well, I'm looking at a chat here. Jerry, can you discuss HR 218 law for retired enforcement? Do states recognize HR 218 issued card? Real quick, for those that might not know, HR 218 was a law passed allowing law enforcement who had a certain number of years, I believe it started out as 15 years or more, could carry their firearm for their own personal protection. So even after a law enforcement officer retires, they can carry. Question is it work in other states in New York City? Yes, legally, it's a federal law that allows. Now, one thing that I can tell you, a lot of retirees work with it, and it's not really a work permit, but it does allow you to carry. You still have to be mindful of certain places that firearms aren't allowed. I have a New York City permit, and I went with my daughter to see a show, and they had metal detectors, and they said I couldn't bring my firearm in. I had to go back to my office and secure my firearm. You're not supposed to go in federal post offices. There are certain places, but states do recognize the cards. Fortunately for law enforcement, typically the people checking it are other law enforcement. So I think they respect that. So if you're retired and are able to carry, yes, you know, but be mindful of all the concerns and considerations about that. So I'm just reading Felix's good points, Felix. Thank you. Any other questions?
Good job, Jerry. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bill. I would encourage people, everyone should be able to protect themselves, number one, and then everyone should be able to protect their families. And mothers do a pretty good job. Um, you know, most often mothers aren't sheep, or if it comes to protecting their child, they're probably going to become that sheepdog. Biggest thing is situational awareness. Make sure you're aware of where you are. As soon as you detect some concern that bothers you, consider, you know, I'm going to leave. You know, if you don't feel safe, you don't have to fight the fight. You know, there's something going on. Maybe there's looks like a fight might start. Get your family out of there. Leave the area. A couple more messages here.
Yeah, they may be going to you directly. I'm just mostly what I was just echoing in the chat. Just excellent presentation, lots of good information. And I know as someone who deals in a lot of these similar topics that, as you mentioned, a lot of these topics could be multi-day instruction just on one point. So definitely lots of good information and very concise. Thank you. Jerry, thank you. That was fantastic. I definitely learned a lot. I'm sure everyone else did. So if there's no other questions, so I guess we'll end it for the evening, right at the 1 hour mark. But great presentation. Thank you again for everything.